Hello, welcome back to the Hutchinson Veterans Outreach Program. My name is Lisa Didhel, and today I'm here with, and I knew I was going to goof this up right away, so I'll just say your first name, which is Jeannie, and it's...
The last name is Hofield, Jeannie Hofield,
Okay.
U.S. Navy veteran.
And we're here to talk about basically some of the things that you've gone through, not only as military, because I know you're a veteran, but your kind of journey to how you got here.
Okay. So as of today, I will say that I'm a woman in long-term recovery, 18 years from recovery from substance use and alcohol. Alcohol was my preference. Thank you. It seems unreal at times. Sometimes it seems like it was just yesterday, and then sometimes it feels like the 18 years.
It takes a while.
It does. And I wasn't born to be an alcoholic, at least that's what I used to think, and it took me 32 years to actually sober up. So I started young, but not as young as some people I know that are in recovery. I didn't start till about 17, 18, graduating from high school, and then drank and used for 32 years. So I was a late bloomer in a lot of things, especially in getting sober. But I never thought I had a problem. I was always having fun, and that's how it started out.
That usually is the way it starts out.
Yes. Normally, well, basically for me, it wasn't until I got close to that end, that period where I knew I actually had a problem, that I realized that I drank to hide a lot of things that were inside of me. And so when I work with women today, and even men in my groups, we understand that it's not drinking because we like the taste of alcohol, and we're basically drinking to cover up something from the past, emotions, traumas. A lot of people have a lot of trauma, Myself, I was born and raised in a little town, Sleepy Eye, Minnesota.
Oh, wow.
And until I was about 15, and then we moved to Iowa, and I graduated high school in Iowa.
Okay.
But I was one of these kids that had very low self-esteem. I had maybe some little childhood memories that are not really prominent in my mind, but they're probably enough to make me feel that I'm not good enough, that I'm not worthy of special attention. So I spent most of my life trying to hide. I never realized I had an ego, but my ego was what kept me safe. It kept me saying, well, you're not good enough, so just to kind of stay in the background.
Yeah.
And then we moved to Iowa, and I graduated high school there, and right towards the end of my senior years where I found alcohol. And it was just like, I'm gonna party, and I drank, and you don't realize how that you get to a certain point where then you're already over that, I'm having fun, and then things start going downhill from there. And my very first drunk was on Cherry Slow gin, and then I had a 3-day hangover, and you would think that would be enough for somebody at 18 years of age to realize, I don't want to keep doing this. Nope. What it was, all I remembered was, after I felt better, I remembered how I felt getting to that buzz, getting to that plateau that this really feels good. I'm no longer shy. I can talk to the opposite sex. I can just be a part of everything. And so I kept chasing that. I kept chasing that for 30 years. I did join the military service. I was 19, I think, at the time. Okay. And I went into the Navy. So this was back in the 70s, mid-70s. So it was at the end of the Vietnam era. And women were just first being really allowed, like on combat ships or as nurses and stuff. Yeah. Most military women were office support, that type of thing. So
basically in the background.
Yes, yes, but where I was stationed, there was 4 men to every woman, and I wasn't of legal age to drink, but they have your enlisted men's club, and it was the life of the party there. I thoroughly enjoyed it, so I think my drinking just really took off. I never once thought that I might have a problem, because everybody was drinking like I was. Yeah. I thought, or it seemed that way.
Exactly.
And then so I didn't stay in, though, because of my fears, maybe, I didn't, I was offered an overseas position. I said, no, I can't go overseas. I'm afraid, I don't want to do this. I haven't lived yet in the United States, so, and I'd met friends in the service that were from the California area, and I was on the East Coast, and I always wanted to go to the West Coast. So I moved to California in late 70s after I got out of the service. I was on a Navy training center.
Okay.
So a lot of the people that I knew there were from all over the place, but I had a really good friend that I'd made, and I moved out to California, and you know, nothing changed in my drinking. I was still always drinking. In the meantime, I'd also found some other uses, other substances to use that helped me, you know, feel really good about myself. And then I met the guy next door. And the guy next door is not exactly like they put in romance novels, you know, but he drank and used like I did. So we were married probably about 14 years. We have one son who's now 39. He has since passed away from alcoholism, from liver disease, you know, all kinds of illnesses.
Yeah.
And so it's sad, you know, he died alone. But that's what this disease does to us. It, you know, it just makes us not care about anybody but ourselves.
Yeah.
So after living out there for like 18 years, I moved back to Minnesota because I knew I couldn't raise my child in California on my own. I moved back there with my parents, but I never stopped drinking. And what my drinking did to me was, because I was always insecure, didn't feel really good about myself, I was always looking for love in all the wrong places, in all the wrong men, all the wrong relationships.
And it has those goggles that they put on.
Yeah, them rose-colored glasses, and you know, like if I give of myself, you'll ask me out on a date, you'll fall in love with me too, you know. So there was that song, "Love the One You're With," you know, and that was probably very popular in the era I grew up with. But what it was doing was killing my soul.
Yeah.
You know, and it wasn't until I realized that. So I started isolating in my drinking. I stayed home. You know, by this time I'm, you know, late 40s and thinking, you know, I can't keep doing this. And I would pray every night when I went to bed that I wouldn't wake up. And every morning I'd get up and it would be the same process all over again. So I decided to go into treatment, but I was just turning 50, and I realized I didn't want to die. And if I kept doing and living the way I was, sitting at home, my life was going to work, thinking about drinking all day long, couldn't wait till I got home. I would get home, and then I would start the process all over again. I was averaging 8 beers a night. The weekends were even more, so it was like really sad, you know. And what's really even kind of baffling sometimes is people who don't drink, they don't understand the compulsion, the need to have that alcohol. You know, why can't you just quit, you know?
It's not that easy.
No, and my family, you know, when I finally told them that I was putting myself into treatment, they were actually kind of surprised. They didn't even really know the quantity of my drinking because I got so good at hiding it, you know, just not showing up to family events. Well, they all drank, so they never probably thought anything different that I went home and finished drinking.
Yep.
And so understanding for people who are not alcoholic, they don't understand how we are compelled to drink. And you know, it's not, I think sometimes eventually your body needs it. You know, you've drank so much, you know, you have the shakes. I believe that, I guess I can say I was blessed. I didn't lose a job over it. I didn't lose home, a marriage. You know, we'd already divorced, and I still drank, and he was still drinking. I didn't lose my life or anything over that, but I was losing the inside of me. And I realized
So you were a functioning alcoholic.
You could call us that, yes, you could call us that.
You could function through life
Right,
and through
but
work.
you know, it started interfering. You know, I started drinking at my lunch hour, you know, to go back to work. And so it ruled my life.
Yep.
What I feel that I'm blessed is I didn't have physical, like I didn't have DTs from withdrawals or anything like this. And I know many people that in meetings that I've gone to that, you know, they would just shake. You know, they'd have to have it first thing in the morning. And for me, it was, if I had a really good drunk the night before, it was the hair of the dog. You know, I'd almost have to have a beer to settle my stomach the next morning.
Yeah.
And I didn't like myself. I would look in the mirror and I would hate myself. I would just tell myself, you're so unworthy and all this stuff. And today it's not like that, you know. I didn't do recovery alone. When I first found out or decided that I needed help, I went to my dad, I went to my employer, and then within a week of saying I can't live like this anymore, I was in outpatient treatment. Okay. And it's different today. Back then we went 4 nights a week, you know, now it's like maybe 3 days or 3 nights and stuff like this. But it got me through the week. My weekends were always a little tough, you know, in the beginning. And then I think it was, I knew I never wanted to go back to how I felt the night that I said I can't live like this anymore. That was my saving grace. I think that's what kept me from having relapses. It's not to say that I didn't relapse in my drinking years, because I would try to tell myself, well, you got a problem, and I'd go, nah, you're just making too much of it. You're okay, until I wasn't okay.
Yep.
And then I did outpatient treatment. They suggest going to meetings. Today there's all kinds of meetings. There's Narcotics Anonymous, there's Alcoholics Anonymous, which has been around for, I don't know, is it 88 years, close to almost 90 years.
Quite a while.
It's a 12-step program, and it works. There's also Celebrate Recovery, which is a 12-step, kind of a religious-based meeting.
Okay.
There's Smart Recovery, which has been around a long time, but I'd never really heard about it till one of my employment years a few years back, and that's self-management and SMART, S-M-A-R-T, self-management and recovery treatment. So it's like, it's not based on the 12 steps, but it's based on finding out what your values are and how you want to live, and picking a goal, and it's also for other things besides alcohol, substance use. It's for weight loss, gambling, and stuff like that. So they're not specific to alcohol like AA is, or
Right.
NA is other substance use. There's also Sober Squad, which is like in a Native American-based group. I don't know, I've never attended one, so I just know of them.
Okay.
So a few years ago, I started working for a county agency as a certified peer recovery specialist. So I'd been in recovery a lot of years, and they were looking for a recovery coach, but the county agency required you to be certified. So the Department of Minnesota Human Services has a program. You take a 40-hour training, and then you take I think it's a 75-question multiple choice test, and if you pass, which I almost barely passed, but I passed. So then I started working with women that were attached to the county that wanted to be involved in this organization where they help you with the public health. It was through public health, and so the nurses there would help them with parenting, and I would help the women with the recovery. Help them to try to however they wanted to do it. And then my last job that I just retired from was as a certified peer recovery specialist, but one of the requirements was to be a veteran. And I've been a veteran since 1974 when I went into the service, but I never until like 30 years later realized I was a veteran, and I was complaining about medical costs. My insurance was always through my jobs.
Yeah.
And my tax person said, well, why aren't you getting VA services? And I said, well, I never thought about it. I never thought I was a veteran, even though I served, if that makes sense.
No, it completely does. There are a lot of people out there that have that same issue. It's like, okay, well, I was in, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 20 years ago, and therefore now it doesn't mean anything.
Right,
it does.
Right, and we were talking earlier, you talked about, women aren't drafted into the service. We don't have the draft anymore, but we choose to go in. I necessarily didn't go in for altruistic reasons at the time. It was like, I didn't know what else to do with my life, So I went in, and I don't think I was necessarily a great military person, because I remember in boot camp, our COO for our unit would tell us, one day she had us all down in the grass looking for our military bearing,
Oh,
so
no.
what is that Bill Murray movie? I can't remember, so you couldn't march on the same beach, and stuff like that. But, I learned a lot. It also got me into, I was a personnelman, so it got me into the office. It helped me learn my typing skills for later in life, so there were skills that I learned from there. I was very naive. But it was a start. But when she said that to me, I go, I have no clue why I don't have VA services. So I contacted the McLeod office here, the Veteran Service Office, and all they said to me is, "What took you so long?"
Yeah.
I found out, I'm welcome to a lot of services. Most of mine are military. I'd already blown the GI thing. That's like a 10-year.
Yeah.
Once you're out for 10 years, so I can't change anything that I wasn't able to do. But I start going now. I go to the St. Cloud. I've been to the Minneapolis VA occasionally, but I generally go to the St. Cloud office. And the very first time they said thank you to your service, it's like, wow, I felt insignificant, and I'm not.
Exactly.
So
we all play our part.
Right. So then for the last, 15 years, I've been getting medical services from the VA.
Very nice.
You know, and
Very
stuff.
nice.
And it's a blessing.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely. I know I go down there too. I go down to the Minneapolis one.
You know, I like the St. Cloud. It's just easier to get to. I'm not a cities person anymore. But being a veteran at this other agency, I started working with veterans in recovery, and there's veterans court and stuff like this, and it's mostly male. There's very few. I think females even have a hard time with the VA, especially that, am I worthy? Am I really a veteran and stuff like that. So it's not so much. I'm glad I'm in recovery, but I'm glad I can work with anyone in recovery,
Yep.
whether it's male or female. I do like men to work with men and women to work with women, because I think we women have a hard time remembering that, you know, we can get along with women too. It's not just the male persuasion.
Exactly.
And there's so many resources out there right now. You could Google where is an AA meeting, where is a Narcotics Anonymous meeting, where is a Smart Recovery meeting. We do not have a Smart Recovery meeting in our area that I'm aware of anymore. There used to be one through one of the treatment centers.
Oh, okay.
But it's easy enough. You could get a hold of Smart Recovery, and you could train to become, I think it's like a $99, they train you to be a facilitator for meetings. So anyone could, you know, start a meeting here in our area.
Exactly.
It's kind of like, what I know, it's District 17, and it actually is McLeod, Sibley, and Carver, part of Carver counties, and so there's meetings. You can go on to District 17, I think it's district17aa.net for their website, and pull up what's listed for AA meetings, and the same thing with NA. Anything is online nowadays. But I've learned when I was working as a certified peer recovery specialist that there's multiple ways of recovery.
Yes.
You know, I'm more of a 12-step person, you know, so it was really hard for me to hear that, you know, I could have medical assisted treatment if I needed to, which is really good for anybody who's used opioids or meth addicts. You know, they have harm reduction also. So the way medical assisted treatment works is, I know I've worked with women that were on Suboxone, so it helps with the cravings and stuff.
Yep.
And then methadone for those that are heroin users and stuff, and there's clinics out there. I didn't need it, but there are those that they can't survive, and maybe one day they'll be able to be off of it. They won't have to use it.
Exactly. But it brings their body down.
Right,
slower.
right. And then opioids is a really hard one if you can't go cold turkey, you know, it's basically
Exactly.
what it is, because sometimes it's like somebody with cancer, chemo is almost harder on them. Sometimes for the treatment is harder on them.
Yeah.
And then there's harm reduction, which is, I had a hard time with that one, because the first time I heard it is, you know, you could be a heroin user and an alcoholic, so if you drop heroin and you're still drinking alcohol, you're still in recovery. So
Yep.
the description is now different. And what I learned is, I have a friend whose brother was a heroin addict, and today he no longer uses heroin, but he still drinks occasionally, and she said she would rather have him drink than always see him OD'd in a hospital, because he's done it multiple times. So it changes, you know, it changed my perspective. So then I was able to work with women that were on the medical assisted treatment, who were doing harm reduction, and it's their path to recovery. Everybody has their own path.
Exactly.
And then, because I'm a veteran, and my job, I was asked to put, actually the clergy that are in recovery, that are veterans, wanted a separate veterans recovery group based on the 12 steps. So I was tasked with connecting with a pastor veteran in recovery in
Nice.
North Carolina and one in Kansas to start an online group. So we meet every Wednesday at noon, and we do like a 12-step thing, and it's for any veteran or any armed service member that's still currently serving, that is either struggling with and want to be in recovery or already in recovery. And we meet every day to share about what we're struggling with, you know, what's worked, what maybe isn't working. You know, we pick a topic. Sometimes it's just learning how to live in sobriety.
Yep.
You know, that there can be fun in sobriety.
Exactly.
and
A lot of people don't understand that. It's like, yeah, you can have fun and still be sober.
Right, right. Actually, today in my sobriety, I'm a totally different person than what I was. I was always like kind of an introvert, and some of my friends say now I'm an extrovert. I really hate being wrong about a lot of things, you know, but I've learned to realize that I can do things that I couldn't do. So once I got sober, I actually went to college. I never went to college in all my
Nice.
years because, well, it interfered with my drinking, for one thing.
It would do that, yes.
And I never thought I was smart enough or good enough to take college courses.
I think sometimes that's what alcohol and drugs actually do to us. I mean, it makes us lie to ourselves.
It's a perceptional disease.
Exactly.
You know,
It's like, no, we're not good enough, or we need more help, so do this, or we just can't do it.
And when we drink and use another substance, it's that mind altering, mood altering. It changes how we perceive ourselves.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a fantasy. It's not reality. But today, my reality is I can do things I never thought I could do. So I got into like all kinds of service things, and you know, I was holding meetings and committees, and you know, being a chair, standing up in front of a crowd of people, and you know, talking about what's going on, and even just telling my story. You know, it just became like, you know, I would say to my family, I never saw myself doing this. She goes, "Oh, we always knew you could," and I'm going, "Really? Why didn't you ever tell me?" I would never probably believed them because I had to believe it in myself first.
Exactly.
You know, I had to find me, and I found that in recovery. And I didn't do it alone. I did it with other people that were in recovery, other men, other women that are in recovery, and I found examples. So I sponsor a lot of women, I guess you could say. So they reach out to me, you know, how do you did it? Would you help me with this? Would you help me with that? My last 2 jobs were in working with women in recovery or veterans in recovery.
Nice.
And it's what's made me be, I guess, who I am today, you know. Doesn't mean I don't get nervous. It doesn't mean my self-esteem doesn't go, "You can't do this, you know what you're talking about." I work through that fear. I've learned to work through that fear today. So
That's really nice.
I'm not sure what else. I just know you don't have to do it alone. There's help out there. Veterans, there's that online every Wednesday at noon meeting. If you happen to be in a different time zone, it's still noon Central Time. And you meet a lot of different people and you learn about, you know, we all might have different stories. You know, like I didn't have a lot of consequences. I had consequences. But that's for another time. But I didn't have, you know, I didn't have DUIs, you know, I didn't have court, you know, those types of things. So I found my recovery just by the fact that I didn't want to live like I wanted to live anymore. Some people need to be badly mangled before they realize that maybe they need help. The hardest thing is saying, "I need help."
Yep.
You know.
Exactly. Now, when you go to, say, one of the Zoom meetings, and I know we'll put the flyer up at the end of the show, if you go into the Zoom meeting, now this is not something you have to feel like you're compelled to talk. You can just
Absolutely not.
come
We
in
do
and-
encourage everybody to introduce themselves, their service, you know, that you know where they served and how long they served, or if they're currently serving. We do encourage people to have their face on there, but they can pass. It's not like, you know. And I think the more they do it, the more they feel like I'm a part of this, and you're compelled to share, you know. And we do ask if it's like what the topic happens to be, you know, no fun in sobriety, and they go, "Well, I don't know where to find it," you know. Plus, we can encourage, we can tell them where to find help, you know, like, you know, if they're actually from a different state, you know, we can help them practice Googling. And I know I've talked to some veterans, they like it, and other veterans wanted to have absolutely nothing to do with it. So what I have also learned is mental health. You know, when I started going to outpatient for the first year that I was doing my treatment and starting to get into groups, I went to saw a counselor.
Nice.
Because I was having feelings I didn't want to deal with. You know, like okay, now I'm supposed to like myself. How do I do that? A lot of shame and remorse. You know, how to work through that. So I encourage anybody that, especially if they're using any kind of substance, you're altering your mood, you're changing how you view the world, and so you need to, if you decide to go into treatment, you need to treat your mental health too.
Oh, exactly.
You know, and
exactly.
After that first year, then it was like, okay, I think I'm good. You don't have to stay in therapy forever, and also if medical assistance is needed so if you have anxiety, panic attacks, depression, you know, don't hesitate to follow doctor's orders if they include some sort of medication for you.
Exactly.
A lot of women I work on use it, and I've worked with some that, well, today she's all upset and mad. I go, what's going on? I said, are you still taking your meds? Well, no. I said, I stopped. And I said, when did you stop? About 2 weeks ago. Why would you do that? Well, everything was going well. That's when you continue. You don't stop because it's going well. You're on it for a reason. So sometimes it's about I'm powerless over my mental health. So
Exactly.
I need to do everything I can to help it. So I think that you treat both. And I always believe that when you treat the mind, you treat the body.
Yep, exactly.
And that's worked for me. So I don't do
And
anything.
you also sometimes have to do all three.
Absolutely.
You have to, as long as you're cutting out the substance that's driving the force, working on your mental health, you also need to check on your physical health.
Right.
Because it's that physical health too that actually gets attacked by all that stuff
Right.
that we're
Right.
ingesting or
Right.
taking or.
I'm glad you said that too, because once I got into treatment, I made myself a physical appointment. I wasn't using the VA at that time yet, but I went in to make sure I didn't have any, cirrhosis, liver problems, or anything like this, and I'm very healthy today, and I stay active.
That is fantastic.
So.
That really is.
Yeah.
I know sometimes it's hard for people to reach out and to just even admit they have a problem.
Right.
A lot of people just will go on with, well, no, that's their problem,
Right.
or
Right.
well, maybe tomorrow, or, but
They drink worse than me,
But
Yeah.
exactly, and you don't have to go through that, and you don't have to sit by yourself and go through
Right.
this.
Right.
A lot of veterans do it. We hear that even on the 22.
I think it's harder sometimes for some of the veterans or even those that are still in the military to ask for the help because they're built, like they're broken down in boot camp and stuff, and they're built up into this machine per se. It's not, you know what I mean?
You're supposed to be larger than
Right,
life.
right. So you're the one out there helping. You're the one keeping everybody safe, and then for you to turn around and say that I can't even take care of myself, that I need help. I think it's sad that, they think that I should be stronger than this. I should be able to do it on my own, and it's not, you can't do it on your own.
Exactly.
I applaud those that can just quit and go on. But what I have seen sometimes, they don't change. And what I have found through doing meetings and groups and stuff like this, I get to change how my behavior is. I get to change my thinking.
Yep.
I don't have to be right about things. I can be wrong at times, and I learn how to get along better. Better relationships I've learned, and my family today, they're very important to me. But my family is my meetings, because they understand me and how I am.
Exactly.
And then there's my family of origin, who today, they think I'm funnier than when I thought I was really funny when I was drinking. And I said, "You're so much more fun now," and I go, "I am," So it doesn't mean I don't fall back into some of my own insecurities. It doesn't mean that I think I'm all better now. I will always have an issue with, as long as I don't take that first drink or take that first drug, hit off a drug or whatever, I know that I will continue to go on and grow.
Exactly.
My life got stunted. So like if I'm in 18 years recovery today, I'm finally 18 years old. Because I started at 18 too, and I think I stunted my growth emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically. So
I'm glad to hear you're getting better. I can't say totally recovered because that doesn't happen.
Never. Yeah.
But I am also glad that you came on the show and shared your story, and we really appreciate hearing from you. And if you need any help with anything, just come back and we'll do another show and get some help out there.
Cool. One last note is, I've been an American Legion member for years and years and years, and never once went to an American Legion meeting. And it's because I maybe didn't have time or just felt out of place or whatever. And this last job that I had, because I had to be a veteran in that position, helped me recognize I am a veteran, and so I started showing up at meetings, and that, it's now I have another new family,
Exactly.
the American Legion, so.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's where I met people like you.
Thank you very much. I really do appreciate you coming out.
You're welcome.
Anybody needs to get a hold of you, they can get a hold of you through Zoom?
Through Zoom, and then on the flyer is my email address. There's several others for a couple of the other members, but then mine is also on there, so they can just email. There's no phone number on there, but there is an email. And then the Zoom link is right on there.
Well, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.